This is the 5-minute 8th grade math class. Category 5, Probability and Statistics. Probability and Statistics deals with two readiness teaks, 811A, dependent and independent events, and 813B, misuses of data. So the probability of finding two events that are dependent, one, you have to calculate the separate probabilities. So let's say that we're looking for the probability of drawing an ace, keeping it, and then drawing a jack. Well, the probability of drawing an ace from a deck of cards is 4 out of 52, and the probability, if you keep it, of drawing a jack is 4 out of 51. Now, because we're implying and, we're going to multiply these two probabilities together, which comes out to be 16 over 2652, which is a really small probability. The probability of independent events is when one event doesn't affect the other or can't affect the other. So for instance, we were trying to find the probability of rolling a 1 and flipping heads. Well, the probability of rolling a 1 is 1 out of 6 on a die, and probability of flipping heads is 1 out of 2. Because there's an implied and, we're going to multiply, so that's going to be 1 out of 12, which is another small probability. Okay, so there are three main ways that you can use statistics to lie or to mislead people into believing what you want them to believe. One is to use a gap scale. So for instance, let's say we were using Mr. Oda's height versus the rest of the United States. Okay, what this graph is showing that the height starts at 5 and goes all the way to 6. Well, that makes Mr. Oda look really short, which he is, but maybe there's not that much of a difference between his height and the rest of the United States. Another way that you could use graphs to lie is using the grouping of bar graphs. So for instance, if we were to have a bar graph that was looking at favorite colors, and we said there was red, green, yellow, and blue, and let's say that red was popular, green was not so popular, but yellow and blue, we sort of used that color as a way to combine the two to make them larger than the red. That's one way to deceive. And lastly, percents. Percents are a great way to mislead data because they only show quantity. So for instance, if you're doing a presidential poll and this many people said yes, they like the president, this many people said no, and this many people said maybe, well, it's hiding the fact that maybe you only asked 10 people. And that's not very representative of the whole population. When we're talking about calculating of numbers, there are four main ways that you can deceive. One is when you're using the mean versus the median. So if you have a group of numbers that are very close together, except that there's one very large number, you could use the median, which might have the mean somewhere in here, but the median is 6, which is a much more representative number of all the numbers. So means have a tendency to be pulled towards really large or small numbers, but the median usually stays very close to where most of the numbers are. You could also use range to do that with the same set of data. If you had 3, 6, 6, and 50, and let's say these were your grades, somebody asked you, hey, what was your grades? You could say that the range was 47. People might think that you had really high grades when in actuality most of your grades were in the low numbers. That same goes for the IQR, which is the middle 50% interquartile range. If you had the same set of data, okay, an interquartile range, if you used that, would be the 6 and the 6, which would be representative, but it would ignore the 56. which might be an important outlier. How did you do that well if these were grades? Most importantly, sampling and getting all this data is the most important thing. And if you don't get a good sample, you're not going to have good data. The most important thing to remember about sampling is that it must be random. Can't ask your friends, can't ask just seniors, can't ask just 10 people, the first 10 people that come out of the school at the end of the day. It has to be a randomly selective group of people, high enough number to be a good sample of the rest of the population. That's category 5 in about 5 minutes.